I was born in Chicago, Illinois, the Windy City. I lived there until I was about 4 years old, then I moved to Racine, Wisconsin, the cheese state. I remember after I moved to Racine, my grandma would call from Chicago once or twice a week to read something from the Bible. I really didn't think much of it at the time, but I always had questions like, where do we come from? Why do bad things happen to good people? And how are the priests giving God the money? I used to think that the priests would have this big long ladder and just walk up there to give God the money. But besides that, none of my questions were answered, so I didn't think much about it at the time. Anyways, I had a friend that I was close to, and to keep her identity safe, I'll call her Alexis. Alexis was one of my best friends, and our moms were very close as well. And she'll stay the night at my house, and I'll stay the night at her house. And I remember one night when we were playing outside, she told me that her mom's boyfriend was touching her inappropriately. And to remind you, I knew this guy. He used to take us to school, out to the and to the parks and stuff. So at first, I didn't believe her until she told me again a few days later. But this time, I saw that she was hurt. As she cried and tearfully described what was happening to her, I remember feeling very confused. I didn't really understand what was happening to her, but I remember knowing to try and comfort her. So I gave her a hug and reassured her that everything was going to be okay. She told me not to tell anyone, and that's what I did. That night I went home. I was so upset, asking myself, how can God allow this to happen to a little girl? I knew I couldn't do anything about it at the time, so I tried to forget about that night and pretend that she didn't tell me anything, no matter how much it was going to eat me up inside. So I just moved on with my life. A few years later, my sister and I moved to Columbia to live with my aunt and her family. It was a better choice that needed to happen, or we could have been placed into the foster care system with strangers. So when we moved, I was happy at first because it felt like I was on vacation. I was so excited to leave Racine, Wisconsin. I needed a break. My mother drove us to Chicago where I got to spend time with my Auntie Faye and great granny. Before going with my grandma, eventually I was driven to Missouri. I was happy to see my TT and cousin Jessica and Joseph, but I also wanted to go home because I missed my mom. It was turning out to be an extended vacation, one that I was not expecting. But anyway, this experience again brought up the unanswered question that continued to agonize me. How could a loving God allow a mother to be kept away from her kids? Then, a few months later, my mom died. I was so angry at my mom, myself, and God. That night, my aunt sat down with me and shared two scriptures from the Bible. One was Revelations 21, verse 4, which reads, "And he," meaning God, "will wipe out every tear from their eye, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away." And I heard this scripture a million times, but this time it actually touched my heart. And the other one was Psalms 27:10. "Even if my own mother and father abandon me, Jehovah himself will take me in." Those two scriptures helped me out so much that I finally found joy. And the only way to experience true joy is in the acronym J, which stands for Jehovah. Put first in life brings the greatest joy. The O stands for others. When we give priority to others, we feel great joy that we can help, and it takes the focus off of our troubles. And finally, the Y, which stands for yourself. Learning to accept yourself and your circumstances is the beginning of the joy we feel when we look to our Creator to help us cope and then to empower us to be positive and excel and exhale beyond any trials. Since I finally found love for Jehovah, it was time for me to apply the O, which is others. So the next day of school, we talked about our bathing suits parts and how no one is supposed to touch you there inappropriately. And I immediately thought of Alexis. I told my teacher after class everything that happened to my friend Alexis. For the first time, I understood what my friend told me that day in Racine. The teacher alerted my auntie, and they made effort to get in contact with Alexis's mom. And ever since then, she has been doing so much better. She is safe with two new baby brothers. So after all that happening, now it's time for me to apply the letter Y, which means yourself. I finally found satisfying answers to my questions about Jehovah God and why there is so much suffering. It made so much sense, and now I know that our Creator is loving and incapable of being responsible for pain we see and experience in this world, which is being ruled by its invisible leader. After understanding this for myself and seeing it in the Bible, I knew I wanted to make the decision to get baptized, and so I did. On August 17, 2019, I publicly dedicated my life to Jehovah. What joy serving Jehovah! Thinking of others and loving yourself brings the greatest joy. It is the best thing I have ever done in my life. Thank you for listening.